Look, I know it's not the answer, right? And this is a world problem, and I think all we can control really is ourselves, and you know, sometimes being brave and having to push through that. And you can't change people's minds if that's the mindset. But last point is when diversity and inclusion is not enough, if you start from stereotypes and move into privilege, because when you start having the conversation about privilege, if you can crack that, people get unconscious bias and they get diversity and inclusion.
So can I just say congratulations to DCU. I know it was a very young trans man who wanted to change the accommodation arrangements in the Centre for Talented Youth programme. Now he did state what he wanted very clearly. He didn't get what he wanted, but the second person that went in got it. And it was all done as a surprise, so when they were allocated their accommodation,
very good,
and it was only when they went to the accommodation they realised that the second trans man that he was in the male corridor. And you should have seen the face, the thrill of that. But CTYI and DCU have really taken steps forward to accommodate trans people, which also has spread then from that university up to Belfast, up to Queens and everything. So you know, really, and it was just about one person. I think it was a 14 or 15-year-old actually said what they wanted, and they were very quiet about it. And the second person went along and said, "I really need this." It wasn't an argument. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't anything. It was just, this is who I am, this is what I need, and how can we meet together to kind of accommodate this?
And that's what we're working on at the moment, is our gender identity policy now for staff and for students.
But it saved lives.
I know, and like there's no getting it right. Like that's the thing we were talking today around, like into the minefield around student records, and what if a staff member, do we medicalise it, and how, like this is a minefield. Nobody knows, we don't know, and sometimes we might write it down and we think it's right, and then somebody comes to us and we're going, actually no, we didn't think, you know. So, but what we, again, it's back to that being brave, and you have to start somewhere, so I don't think we have it right by any stretch. But again, what I do is use the experts. I'm not an expert in that, but we have experts in the university that are helping me write the policy and the practice documents, and I use them, so that makes a big difference. And actually, when we have our policy published, all going well, it'll be in the next 4 weeks, that'll be up online. So if you wanted to take a gender identity policy into your organisation, we're building people manager toolkits and practice documents and the A to Z of all the terms and all the stuff that people don't want to talk about. It's going to be up there. It's public forum. So.
It's a very good practice for other organizations as well, to see what you are doing and what they can take as in the organizations as well.
So I have a question for Amanda. I work in tech. I love tech. That's one of the reasons why I'm in tech. And I also involved in a lot of events here within Dublin. I work closely with David in a bunch of events. So I'm curious to know from your standpoint about, especially about the lack of amount of women in tech. I have noticed that I have a lot of friends in tech, and we have discussed this multiple times. So I'd really like to know your perspective on how men could help bring more women in tech, or is that something that women would not be very comfortable with? Like that's something that I'm not very aware of. Like I don't know how to approach that topic, even though I love teaching tech, especially Python. Like I'm part of the committee in Python Island here in Dublin. So we as an organization, we can definitely make an impact, and we love to make a step in there. But we are looking for avenues where we can make a contribution. Like I personally, I organize a lot of workshops here in Dublin in tech, specifically in tech, and I do see a lot of women come and attend workshops. But again, one of the things I've noticed, like you said, is they don't ask too many questions. Men ask a lot of questions. So I've definitely seen that, and one of the reasons could be because there's a lot more men in the room compared to women. I'm not sure if that's the thing. So I'd definitely like to have a perspective on how we could help. Like I'm all for it, like in any way I can. So I would definitely love to hear a perspective on that.
Well, you know, like with so many other issues, there's just so many different facets to it, okay? And I suppose initially when I was looking at the gender and tech issue, you know, if we were doing a coding camp for girls, my boss would have said, well, you have to get female lecturers in to do this. And I'd say, well, no. Like, why can't we get the male lecturers in to do it as well? Because we don't want them thinking that the male lecturers won't come in and engage with them. So we kind of made a conscious decision then that any coding camps or any kind of camps we do in the school, or we do off-site in schools, which we do a hell of a lot of, we send both male and female lecturer in there to show them that, you know, it is about both. I suppose one of the things I see in the tech industry is probably a lack of women and actually all minorities in mentoring roles or leadership roles. So I wonder, is there, now look, I've been in academia a long time, it's a long time since I've worked in a company, but I wonder, is there a lack of encouragement with regard to minorities to take on mentoring roles, to take on leadership roles? I'm not just talking about women. I don't know, maybe you can tell me that. Do you see any bias in the room towards women, other than the fact that they are outnumbered?
Personally, no.
No.
Personally,
Yeah.
no. Like in terms of like tech workshops, like it's like everyone learns from everyone. There's no one expert in the room. Like I usually tend to mix people in with different experiences, so that no one group is polarized. So no one group gives all the answers. So I never let that happen. So I tend to mix groups around. So that's one of the things which I tend to do, just to average things out. But I've never seen, when it comes to learning, I've never seen that there's a bias between people. Like everyone just wants to learn.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this statement of being brave, one of the things I do think the companies are afraid to do in a way is engage with acknowledging differences, and you know, acknowledging that people are different culturally or whatever can be difficult, as you say. We don't know the right things to say. So you know, I think there needs to be, for companies to be very clear about the diversity and inclusion policy. They need to get the word out there. You know, like people, they assume people are aware of this, but they're not always. I personally worked in a company where one of my colleagues left on Friday and came in on Monday and had clearly they hadn't decided over the weekend, but they had gone through the process of changing gender, and they came in on Friday and they came in on Monday and they were wearing different clothes essentially, and everyone sat there and no one knew what to do. I remember sitting there, it was the most awkward I've ever felt in my entire life. And what I expected to happen was the team lead, that person's team lead, or our boss, to send around an email and say something about this. Nothing was ever said. The person who was involved finally sent out an email saying, from here on in I wish to be referred to as whatever, and I'd appreciate your support. It was never acknowledged in any way. And you know, I couldn't get over it. Like if someone came in with a different haircut, you might say something, and this was clearly huge. Acknowledge the fact that women may, you know, if you're having children, you're going to have to take maternity leave, and that's just what it is. But paternity leave is just as important. Okay, so yeah, sorry.
Two things here. One about the inclusion, a very short story that how to accept. I work in tech myself, and I have some subcontractors. Once I was sitting in front of a client in their premises, and I called my subcontractor for some networking and some physical work. And he answers the call and he says, okay, Bill, let me pull over and let me speak to you. I said, okay. I've had this thing with me for about 2 years, but I want to share it now. So I wouldn't use real names. So previously it was Michael, then now we are talking about Geraldine.
Right.
So he says, I'm Geraldine now. I'm quiet, right? Sitting in front of the customer. I said, what do you mean? I've had this transition for over 2 years. So I was Michael, now I'm Geraldine. I'm looking at the customer, he is listening what we are talking. I said, can I do the job? He said, I said, come over tomorrow morning. So on the second thing, Ireland is a home to top 10 tech companies in the world, top 18 out of 20 of, I think, banks in the world, top 17 or 18 pharmaceutical out of 25 in the world, right? When have this much big influence of diversity, international influx, right? What is the missing link which is not letting this integration happen to its full extent? One thing. Second continuation to that, what do you think at a government level could be a possibility, or if there is a power group or if there is a board advisory which can convey this message, what do you think could come from top to bottom rather going from bottom to top?
So the first, your answer to the first one, I think you're absolutely right. And even if you think about from a product development perspective, so when I was in tech, Ireland was always seen as the best market to test in because it was small, it was fast, it was diverse, and you could fail hard, fail fast kind of thing, you know, and it is. So if you think about that from a product perspective, like the global companies kind of see that, they see that. So it's the same from a people perspective. So I think one of the things that we've been really slow on in Ireland, I was going to make a little tech joke there that nobody would get me. One of the things that we've been really slow on in Ireland is employing, having a dedicated lead for diversity and inclusion. So if you look at, it's kind of like the horses bolted, right? They've, you know, companies have got really bad press, and that hasn't even started here yet. I'm talking about in the States. So what happens is then the global company goes, shit, we better do something about this. They put somebody in place, they create this beautiful slide pack, and they send it over to Ireland, and it lands on the desk of people who have full-time jobs, and they're committed, and it's all voluntary effort, and sometimes they don't get the kind of senior leader buy-in, and it's really slow. And that's what happens, it's really slow. And sometimes then it's optics rather than real effort. What I've started to see in the last, I would say, probably only about 3 or 4 years, and you'll see it now. Like I used to be, like even in the universities up to 2 years ago, there was only 3 of me in higher education. Now every university has a lead for D&I. And it's been linked. You ask, what can government do about it? My role and the performance of the university is linked to research funding. Yeah. So if they don't deliver on the diversity and inclusion and report on it annually, it's linked to their funding, and then that'll be reduced. So for organisations, what I'm starting to see is lots of programme leads, and you'll start to see that popping up now in Ireland, where the global programme, what they realise is, I developed it in America, it doesn't really fit here in Ireland, so let me get a programme manager now that's going to take that strategy and make it relatable and embed it into the values and the culture that we have here. So it's been slow, right? I think this is the movement. Like this wouldn't have happened in Ireland 24 months ago. Not a chance. It wouldn't have. And the focus has been very much on gender. And in fairness, the focus on gender has a good thing, because it's kind of broken, it's forced the conversation. And so now we have, if you look at the new gender task force that's been put in place to focus on gender equality in higher education, if you look at the better balanced boards, and then there was a new one, what's the one that was just launched there the other day? Breed Horan has gone in as the chair, and that's looking now at getting businesses from the board level down to start annually reporting on their gender stats. So it's happening. This is it. This is you're asking, what can we do? This, keep this going, and you keep moving forward and start creating a movement around it. And there isn't a movement. We're kind of grassroots here. We're only getting started here. We need to get more strategic, get more planned, and start to move things forward as a group.
Can I make a suggestion? Just my back is a little bit sore. Is it possible to circulate outside? It's just, I know diversity is also about speaking up when you feel uncomfortable. So it's carried by reality, so it's just my back is a little sore.
That's fine.
I think we're
going to finish up now, because we've gone way over time, I think. So.
Yeah. So just to thank everyone, that's been really insightful, and I think we're at a very exciting juncture in Ireland in terms of the whole diversity and initiative piece. And certainly my wish for Pan and her team and everyone who's been involved in this is that this time next year, this time 5 years and 10 years, we'll all be able to say we were in the room when this started, we started diversity and it started, and weren't we lucky, and we'll all be able to contribute and remember and tell our children and our grandchildren about the time that we were there for a long time. So it just remains for me to thank ABC Bank for their hospitality as sponsor this evening's event. Thank you to my fellow ambassadors, and thank you to our panellists, and of course above all, thank you to Cork, who's going to have the final word then.
Yeah, thank you very much for everybody for joining. This is the first event that I organized myself actually, and I would appreciate if you have any feedback. And thank you very much for joining us, Amanda and Sandra. We are delighted that you made it here today. Thank you.